Now, a lot of you are probably saying to yourselves, I would never make such obvious mistakes in my code. I would never go and take a user's password and store it to the external storage on an Android device. And probably most of you wouldn't, if the code was just that simple. But in the real world, most of the code bases that we work with are a lot more sophisticated than the ones that we've been looking at. The examples that we've seen so far of leaking private data are purposely simplified code examples that help us to illustrate the specific properties that cause code to leak data on the external storage, or by having the wrong permissions, or by inserting developer data inside of it. But in the real code bases that we work with, they're much more sophisticated, and so it's not quite as straightforward to see these types of errors. So what we're going to look at now is what makes it hard to write applications that don't necessarily adhere to all of the security practices we've just talked about, and the approaches that we can use to help improve how we write our code so that it's much more obvious when we're making mistakes, and much easier to ensure that we don't make mistakes and that other developers don't make mistakes in how they use our code. The key thing that we're going to see is that when we write apps, we typically don't write a simple app, but we write an app that's built on a series of abstractions that get ever more high level as we go up the stack. And our app is built on top of these abstractions. And if we're not careful about how we build these abstractions and how we use them, we'll end up in situations where it's very hard to see how an action up here causes leakage of data out the bottom end of this set of abstractions. And so what the goal of these tips that we're going to talk about in a minute is to ensure that when we build abstractions into our code, that we don't build abstractions that make it hard to do the right thing, but instead we build abstractions and interfaces that make it easy for developers to do the right thing with our code, and make it easy for developers to see that code written with our abstractions are doing things properly and securely.